What if your body has been whispering the secret all along, that you're built to live longer than anyone expected? Not because of perfect genes or lucky breaks, but because of choices you've quietly made without even realizing it. Most people never see the signs. They miss them in the rush of daily life. But not you. Not today. Because in this video, we'll uncover 6 rare clues, drawn from research, real lives, and the quiet strength of those who've outlived the odds. And sign number 6? It might just unlock everything. So if something about this message stirs something inside you, don't scroll past. Like this video, subscribe, and stay with me to the end. This might be your moment. Sign 1. You feel gently pulled toward something, even if it's small. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be grand. But if something still draws you in the morning, a soft tug inside your chest when the sun rises, a quiet voice urging you toward one more day, then you're already holding a key most people overlook. Maybe it's the promise of a phone call with your granddaughter, the quiet comfort of tending your backyard garden, that book on the shelf you've meant to finish for 3 summers now, or simply the ritual of placing a pot of coffee on the stove while the house is still asleep. These moments, so easy to miss, are actually markers of something powerful: purpose. Science backs this up. Studies from Yale, Stanford, and even the NIH have found that seniors with a daily sense of meaning, even in the smallest things, are more likely to live longer, with better cognitive and cardiovascular health. In fact, one study showed that a sense of purpose could predict longevity more strongly than regular exercise or clean eating. Let that sink in for a moment. Your reason to wake up might be doing more for your lifespan than your treadmill. And here's what's even more surprising. Purpose doesn't need to be a career or a mission. In later life, it often becomes quieter, less about doing and more about being. Being present, being needed, being connected. When you feel a pull towards something, no matter how small or quiet, your body responds. Your heart gets steadier, your brain stays sharper. Even your immune system becomes more resilient. I once knew a woman named Linda, age 84, who said her reason for getting up each morning was simply to water her 3 houseplants and talk to them. That was it. And you know what? Her plants thrived, and so did she. Because what matters isn't the size of the purpose, it's that it exists. So if you've ever worried that your life has gotten too quiet or your days too routine, take a moment and look closer. That small pull, that quiet spark, it matters more than you realize. It might just be the very thing keeping you strong. If there's something small that still calls to you each morning, a name, a habit, a memory that gives your day meaning, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let's remind each other that purpose doesn't retire, and neither should we. Sign 2. You quietly question things others simply accept. There's something rare, even radical, about a person who still asks why after the world has already handed them an answer. Most people, as they age, stop questioning. They follow the same routines, believe the same things, and stop looking beyond what they already know. They call it stability. They call it wisdom. But in truth, sometimes it's just resignation. They've stopped expecting life to surprise them. But you still wonder. Maybe it's something simple, like reading the ingredients on the back of a package instead of trusting the front label. Maybe you caught yourself questioning why you still do something just because that's the way it's always been. Or maybe, and this is the most powerful kind of all, you've started quietly asking what parts of yourself you haven't explored yet. That kind of curiosity isn't small. It's the sign of a living, breathing, evolving mind. And it matters more than most people realize. Studies from the University of Edinburgh have shown that intellectual curiosity and open-mindedness are linked to slower cognitive decline, greater emotional resilience, and yes, a longer life. Curiosity doesn't just make you interesting, it makes you stronger, more alert, more alive. But this isn't about becoming a scholar or an expert. It's not about going back to school or reading encyclopedias. It's about that spark, that tiny moment when something doesn't quite add up, and instead of shrugging, you lean in. You ask, you listen, you learn. That kind of behavior is often overlooked in older adults. People assume we've made up our minds about everything. But the truth is, it's never too late to stay a student of life. And sometimes the smallest questions are the ones that lead to the biggest awakenings. So if you've ever been told that you think too much or that you worry too much, let me offer a different perspective. Maybe you're just paying attention. Maybe you still believe that life has more to show you and more for you to become. And that belief, that quiet insistence on growing even now, that's longevity in motion. If this sounds like you, if you've learned something recently that shifted your thinking or even challenged an old belief, I'd love to hear about it. Share it with me in the comments. What are you exploring? What question has been tugging at your mind? Let's keep asking. Let's keep wondering. Because the moment we stop being curious is the moment we start getting smaller. And we weren't made to shrink. We were made to expand right into the next chapter with eyes wide open. Sign 3. You still move, even when no one's watching. It's easy to assume that vitality in old age comes from grand acts, marathons, gym memberships, or complex yoga poses. But if you look closely at those who live well into their 90s, you'll notice something quieter, subtler, and perhaps even more powerful. They never stop moving. Not for the applause, not for the step count, but because their body still whispers, "I'm here." And they listen. Eleanor was 84 when her grandson asked her how she stayed so spry. She laughed and said, "I dance with the broom when I clean the kitchen." What he didn't know was that every morning, before she made her tea, she'd raise her arms to the ceiling, wiggle her fingers, bend her knees, and thank her legs out loud for still holding her up. No one told her to do it. It wasn't on a checklist. But movement, for Eleanor, was a love language, a way of reminding herself that she was still here, still able, still part of the rhythm of life. There's a misconception that daily movement only counts when it's intense or structured. But the truth is, longevity isn't tied to how hard you push. It's tied to how consistently you care. Whether it's stepping out onto your porch to feel the morning breeze or reaching down to touch your toes before bed, these quiet rituals send signals to your muscles, joints, and even your brain. We're still in this together. Science backs this up. A study published by the American Heart Association found that older adults who moved even in small bursts, as little as 10 minutes of walking or stretching a few times a day, had significantly lower risks of heart disease, stroke, and cognitive decline. More importantly, these habits help maintain independence. It's not just about living longer. It's about living on your terms, in your home, with your own 2 feet beneath you. But maybe the most powerful part of movement at this stage of life isn't physical at all. It's emotional. It's in the way your shoulders relax after a gentle stretch, or the way your breath deepens when you take a slow walk around the block. It's the pride that swells when you realize your body, this body that has carried you through love, loss, change, and time, is still showing up for you. And yes, some days it will feel harder. The weather might be cold, the joints might creak. But every small movement is a quiet declaration, "I'm not done yet." So let this be your reminder. You don't need to run, you don't need to impress anyone, you just need to move for you, for your heart, for your breath, for your joy. And if today all you can manage is standing by the window and swaying to your favorite song, that's enough. Because you are enough. If you're someone who stretches in the morning, walks just because it feels good, or still dances while you fold laundry, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what movement looks like in your world. Share it in the comments so someone else, maybe someone who's feeling a little stiff or a little stuck, gets inspired to try. Your movement might seem small, but for someone else, it might be the first step. Sign 4. You've learned to laugh at the chapters that once made you cry. There's a moment. And if you've lived long enough, you know it. When the very memory that used to bring you to tears suddenly, quietly, makes you smile. It's not because the pain disappeared. It's because you outgrew it. You carried it, sat with it, lived through it. And then one day, you realized that it no longer owned you. That is not weakness. That is not forgetting. That's healing. Real healing. And do you know what often marks that shift? Laughter. Not the loud, boisterous kind, but a soft, knowing chuckle that escapes when you think about how hard you once cried over something that now seems, if not small, then at least survivable. Helen, a retired music teacher from Michigan, once shared a story during a local gathering. She talked about how, after her husband passed, she spent 3 weeks trying to figure out how to use the coffee machine he always handled. She cried every morning. Not for the coffee, but for what it represented. The silence, the absence, the new weight of doing things alone. A year later, while sharing that story, she burst out laughing. "That silly machine nearly broke me," she said, wiping away tears. "Now I talk to it every morning like it's him. I say, 'All right, Roger, don't burn the brew today,' and somehow it feels like he's still here." That's not denial. That's strength with a sense of humor. And people who make it past 90, they all seem to have this beautiful, quiet ability to laugh in places that used to ache. Scientists are beginning to understand why. A study from Loma Linda University found that seniors who reported frequent laughter, even when laughing at themselves, had lower levels of stress hormones, stronger immune systems, and improved short-term memory. But perhaps even more powerful than the biology is the spirit behind it. When you laugh, especially after pain, you're doing something sacred. You're telling life, "You didn't break me. You shaped me." That kind of joy is rooted not in perfection, but in survival. And not just survival, resilience. Because if you can look back on your hardest seasons and still find a glimmer of light, a moment of levity, that means you're still alive in all the best ways. You're still here. You're still growing. And maybe most importantly, you're still willing to find the beauty between the cracks. This kind of joy doesn't come from entertainment or distraction. It comes from transformation. It's earned. And if you've earned it, wear it proudly. So let me ask you, and be honest with yourself, what made you smile this week? Was it something silly your grandchild said? Was it the way your dog tilts its head when you talk? Or maybe it was something deeper, something you once thought would break you, but now makes you shake your head and grin because somehow you're still standing. If that resonates, I'd love to hear your story. Share in the comments below, not just because it helps others, but because it honors your journey. Your laughter might be the medicine someone else needs to hear today. Because joy, when shared, doesn't just grow, it multiplies. Sign 5. You no longer carry what once weighed your heart down. There comes a point in life, not always loudly and not always planned, when we finally decide to put something down. A grudge, a regret, a wound so old it almost felt like part of who we were. And in that moment, something remarkable happens. We start to breathe easier. Forgiveness isn't flashy. It doesn't come with applause or celebration. Most of the time, no one even notices when it happens, except you. And maybe that's the point, because true forgiveness isn't a performance. It's a quiet release, a turning inward and saying, "This no longer gets to live rent-free in my spirit." I remember a woman named Ruth I met in a senior center in Ohio. She had the kind of presence that made you feel calm just standing near her. One afternoon, she shared a story about her younger sister. They hadn't spoken in over 40 years. "I used to think I was protecting myself by holding on to the anger," she said, "but I was really just keeping the wound open." Then one morning, Ruth woke up and thought, "What if today I just let it go?" She wrote a letter. No expectations, no blame, just love. And even though her sister never responded, Ruth said something inside her finally shifted. "It felt like I took 1,000 pounds off my chest," she said. "And that weight, it was mine. I had the key all along." Science backs Ruth's wisdom. Research from Johns Hopkins University shows that people who forgive experience lower blood pressure, reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety, and even improved immune function. But beyond the science, forgiveness, especially later in life, is about something deeper. It's about reclaiming your peace. And let's be honest, the older we get, the more chances we've had to be hurt. Disappointments from family, friendships that faded, words we never got to say, apologies we never received. Pain doesn't stop visiting just because we age, but our response to it can change. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve peace. And peace, my friend, is one of the most underrated signs of strength. It's not about being passive or letting people walk all over you. It's about refusing to let the past keep you shackled when you could be free. People who live past 90 often share this trait. They've learned how to clear the emotional clutter. They've stopped replaying old arguments. They've stopped rewriting what can't be changed. Instead, they use that energy to move forward, lighter and stronger than before. So I want to ask you something. Not as a host, but as a fellow human being who's been broken and rebuilt more times than I can count. Have you put something down recently? Maybe it was a memory, a name, a story you used to tell that always left you hurting afterward. Maybe it was a decision to stop carrying the blame, or the resentment, or the fear. Whatever it was, I want you to know it matters. And your story, your release, might be the permission someone else is waiting for. So if you're ready, or if you've already done it, share it in the comments below. You never know whose heart you might lighten. Sometimes healing doesn't look like medicine or miracles. Sometimes it looks like letting go. Sign 6. You make plans for what's ahead, not because you have to, but because you still want to. There's something quietly powerful about a person who still circles dates on the calendar, who still flips through travel brochures, who still writes lists of things they've never done and still intend to. It may seem small, but it's not. It's rare, and it's one of the clearest signs that hope hasn't packed its bags and left. In fact, it's alive and well. I once met a man named Frank at a public library workshop. He was 91 and wore a navy ball cap that said "Still Learning." When I asked what brought him in that day, he smiled and said, "I'm researching Italy. I've never been, and I think it's time I go." He paused. "I want to hear church bells from a balcony in Florence. I think I'd like that." He wasn't chasing some last chance bucket list. He was chasing wonder. And that's the thing. People who live the longest often have one surprising trait in common. They still look forward to something. It doesn't have to be dramatic or grand. Maybe it's planting a vegetable garden this spring. Maybe it's learning to dance again. Maybe it's taking painting classes at the senior center on Thursdays. But they're planning, not just remembering. And that mindset, that quiet belief that more good things are on the way, changes everything. Studies from the University of Michigan have found that forward-looking optimism is a strong predictor of better physical health, improved recovery from illness, and lower mortality. Hope doesn't just make you feel better. It helps you live longer. But let's be honest, staying hopeful isn't always easy. Life gives us reasons to stop dreaming. Illnesses, losses, disappointments, the weight of too many used-to-bes. And yet, some people refuse to close the door on what's possible. They leave the light on. And maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been through things that would have made others give up, but you didn't. You still wake up and wonder what's next. You still scribble down recipes to try or jot a reminder to call that friend next week. You still have something inside that whispers, "Not yet, there's more for me." If that sounds like you, don't underestimate the power of your mindset. It's not naive. It's not silly. It's strength. Planning doesn't mean you're denying the realities of aging. It means you're still living inside it. It means that even though the world might try to convince you that your best years are behind you, your soul knows better. I want to ask you a simple question, and I really hope you'll answer it. What are you still looking forward to? It doesn't have to be big. Maybe you're planning a weekend road trip to see fall colors. Maybe you've signed up for a class, or you've decided to start writing down your life stories to pass on. Maybe you're finally getting that puppy you always wanted. Whatever it is, write it in the comments, not just for me, but for the person scrolling who might need to be reminded that they, too, can look ahead. Because hope is contagious. And when we speak it out loud, when we name the things that still stir excitement in us, we don't just inspire others, we remind ourselves that we are not done yet. You're not finished, And your future? It's still yours to shape. So tell me, what are you planning next? Based on our research and advice, these signs aren't coincidences. And they're certainly not magic. They're reflections, quiet, intentional choices that don't just add years to your life, but life to your years. If you recognized even 2 or 3 of these signs in your own life, don't brush them off. That's not a coincidence. That's confirmation, a quiet signal that you're doing something right, even if the world rarely tells you so. Maybe you don't see it every day. Maybe no one around you has paused long enough to say it. But let me say it clearly now. You're doing better than you think. So let me gently ask, which of these signs spoke to you the loudest? Was it the hope you still carry? The resilience you've quietly built? Or the way your spirit still leans forward, into the unknown, trusting there's more to come? I'd love for you to scroll down and leave a comment. Tell me which sign echoed in your heart, and if this message sparked even the smallest flicker of recognition or encouragement in you, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone else who needs to remember that their story isn't over either. Because this journey we're on, this beautiful, complex, ongoing journey of aging, it's not just about living longer, it's about living wiser, living deeper, living truer, more present in your own skin, more connected to what matters, more fully alive, right here, right now. That's the part no one teaches us when we're young. But maybe, just maybe, it's the part we're finally ready to learn now. And if you've made it this far with me, I want to thank you, not just for watching, but for showing up, for being here, for being open. This moment, this breath, this reflection, it belongs to you. And I'll see you in the next one.